With me on this episode are two people who I am just thrilled to have. Not only do we have a special guest from Fedora, we also have a special guest from Lenovo, and I bet you can guess what we're going to be talking about. Do you want to go around and just introduce yourselves real quick and say what you do at your respective companies?
I'll jump in first. I'm Mark Pearson. So I work for Lenovo for the PC Linux team. So I'm a senior Linux developer, I help work with the Linux team, get Linux running on our PC platforms and make sure that's as good as it can be.
And I'm Matthew Miller. I am the Fedora project leader. Red Hat graciously pays me to do that, which is very exciting. I work with the Fedora community to try and make sure that we have a cohesive strategy and are all working together in a positive way to, make the world a better place through more Fedora.
So I think my first burning question for you guys is, how did this Fedora on Lenovo hardware partnership come about?
That's a good question. And I wasn't deeply involved with the conversations when it started, but we've worked with the Red Hat engineers for years, and we collaborate with them closely. We work with them a lot. So I think the Fedora project just came out of that. It made sense. It just we're talking to Red Hat, and so they introduced Fedora, and it is a really good fit.
Yeah, from my point of view, Red Hat has a pretty substantial investment in desktop technologies, but that is very much aimed at kind of specialized enterprise use cases. And there's some high-end Lenovo workstation class hardware that you can get Red Hat Enterprise Linux on, but Red Hat isn't particularly interested in kind of the broader consumer and even developer desktop market because it's a hard market to sell an enterprise product into, and what Red Hat is a company that sells enterprise software. I think that as part of that collaboration of, how can we have something that fits there, working with the Fedora community and having Fedora Workstation be the choice of operating system for this class of systems made a lot of sense.
For people who may not have checked in on Fedora in the last year or two, what specific maybe features or improvements have been introduced that people might want to be aware of?
So from a desktop point of view, of course, we integrate a huge amount of change in upstream software. And so updates in, for example, GNOME are huge. This latest release of the GNOME desktop has a lot of performance improvements and some really nice user experience performance improvements that I think will be pretty obvious for anybody who's upgrading from a couple Fedora releases to this one. We've also made a lot of performance improvements under the hood. Some of the stuff, there's a recent change to Python, which gives something like a 30% performance improvement, which is pretty cool. And it's also neat how that came about because someone was looking at Python performance and just the intricacies of how Python, the programming language, works, and suggested that we'd get a big speed up if it was all compiled statically rather than using dynamic libraries, which would be a big change, and which maybe could break a lot of things. And so there was kind of a community collaboration back and forth, and people came up with a clever solution where a particular compiler flag gives you almost all of that benefit without the downside. And so that was neat because it was a big mailing list thread discussion that actually came to a better outcome than the original proposal.
Nice.
Which is a great example of how Fedora as a project, when it's working well, works to make things better. So we've had a lot of changes like that throughout the operating system that kind of incremental changes add up to a lot after a year or two of not looking at it.
I feel like there is a little bit of confusion or maybe just not enough clarity about Fedora's involvement with the development of GNOME, Canonical's involvement with the development of GNOME, right? It's many moving parts. But what role does Fedora play when it comes to the development of the GNOME desktop?
In a lot of ways, Fedora is basically a consumer or we're a kind of a downstream stakeholder of it, and we're kind of the way in which GNOME gets into the hands of a lot of users. Fedora as a project is in an ongoing conversation with GNOME as an upstream. People in Fedora work on packaging the upstream as it comes out and make it fit into the Fedora way of doing things. And we try to take a light touch with that, because that's generally the Fedora philosophy towards the software in the upstream. Some distributions really try to craft everything into being very specific to that distro, and Fedora tries to take a balance of making sure that things work well for our users and are integrated nicely together, but also stay true to the upstream software. So that's basically the Fedora connection. Now, Fedora is sponsored by Red Hat, and like I said earlier, Red Hat has a large desktop team. A lot of the people on that desktop team are paid to both work in Fedora and work in the GNOME upstream and lap between those things. But Red Hat actually does sponsor GNOME separately from Fedora, and works on GNOME and GNOME technologies in that without necessarily channeling that through Fedora. Although those changes, because of our development process, land in Fedora before they would ever go into a RHEL operating system. So Fedora is involved in that way as well.
Okay.
I don't know if that clarifies things or just makes an even more confusing picture, but it is complicated.
Maybe both. Maybe both. I just know that from a consumer point of view, from a Linux noob, I still consider myself a Linux noob. When I first got into it, I asked people, what's the best, what is the best distro to experience the GNOME desktop on? And it seemed like everybody said Fedora at the time, because it's kind of vanilla GNOME, right? Is that still the case?
Yeah, I think that, that's an outcome of what I was saying about our trying to follow the upstreams and kind of respect, their vision for how it should look and work together. And so, that is the case. And then also, Fedora has a fast-moving cadence, which kind of goes in the same cycle as GNOME. So we have our 6-month releases that will tend to usually have the 0.1 release of the latest GNOME desktop. The point that basically not the whatever 3.36.0, but the 0.1 usually lands with our release, give or take, depending on the timing. But basically that means we usually are pretty good way to experience the latest version of GNOME, maybe with a little bit of the release bugs kind of smoothed out. So nice balance between following and something I like to avoid in Fedora, the bleeding edge.
Yeah, I think that's weird. I'm a bleeding edge hardware guy, but I don't want bleeding edge software, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm a unique case. It does. Well, it works on Pop OS, but there's the hardware enablement stack now, and that has done wonders for people with newer hardware. And so, I think that's possible. Okay, Mark, over to you. Can you give us kind of a brief of the ThinkPad systems that are coming out with Fedora and the highlights and what people can expect and what benefit they'll have from getting this hardware?
So we're doing the Fedora Workstation Edition, Fedora 32 Workstation Edition that was just released, and it will be available on 3 platforms. So the X1 Carbon 8, which is brand new, the P1 Gen 2, and the P53. So we're doing it initially on those 3 platforms, and basically we take that release and it goes through our test team to make sure everything is working as well as it can, and we've been collaborating with the Fedora team to resolve any issues and bugs. And then so we'll be announcing, it should be this summer, will be available on the web to sell for just anybody to get, which for us is a new, big, exciting thing. So that they'll be available. So if you are a Linux user and you want to use Linux on one of these awesome pieces of hardware, it'll be available for you and tested with Lenovo's sort of behind it and supporting the hardware.
This is nice, because I feel like there is a mentality in the Linux community that ThinkPads are already the best laptops for Linux. And so, I mean, that's no secret. I mean, they're durable. They're for the most part very compatible out of the box. And as you guys know, I gathered a bunch of community questions, and there were some real doozies that some people asked. And this one is from Mark. He says, I own a Lenovo Yoga 930, a sweet piece of hardware, on which I maintain a Windows partition. Though I spend the majority of my time on this device using Linux, there are features that I do enjoy while using Windows that are not, or are poorly, supported in Linux, such as the fingerprint reader, tablet mode, and use of the built-in stylus. And so basically, he's wondering if support for some or all of those features could result from this partnership.
Sure. So, and yeah, the Lenovo 930, I assume he's referencing the C930. So
yeah, I believe so. Yeah, believe so.
So the interesting thing is that actually isn't one of the platforms that we do Linux certification on. So
okay.
Just to clarify that, we certify quite a few of our, most of our ThinkPad models, and ThinkStations and desktops, but that's not one of them. So I don't actually know a lot about it. I don't know what devices are on it. So it's really hard to answer specifics for that model.
No, I think that his general question is this partnership going to end up producing some of those features that we just can't get very well supported on Linux right now.
Yes, and so the nice answer there is that yes, it does, and it does already. We've been working with the hardware vendors, and making the vendors for the platforms we support Linux on contribute drivers upstream, so it goes into the kernel, and so that their firmware goes onto LVFS, which for Linux users is very important, and all of it with the aim of making it better for our Linux users on our platform. So there's definitely a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes here to make sure that that's what's happened. And so to take a couple of specific examples, the fingerprint reader.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
That's a big one.
I know, and it was interesting. So, but no, we did. We worked with. Actually, it was with some Red Hat engineers and Synaptics. So the fingerprint reader on a number of our platforms, not all of them, but a number of them, X1 Carbon 7, P1 Gen 2, and P5, the ones that are as part of this, the device there does work. So the driver there was a new version of the Fprint library to support it, and the firmware is on LVFS right now. It's in testing status. It's going to go stable really soon. Like I was hoping today, but anyway, really soon. And so you can use it, and it works. I've been using it on my X1 Carbon 7. So fingerprint, yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome.
It does depend on which devices the hardware vendor is willing to support. But yes, so yeah, these exercises are how I don't know for the Yoga 930. And same with stylus. I've been working with the lib Wacom team and getting stylus added, and there's yes. The short answer is yes. That goes generally for what we're doing with our team. It's important to contribute upstream, and then it comes all down into the distros. But obviously, working with Fedora helps that happen.
It's feasible then to assume that if someone buys a ThinkPad this summer, specifically one of the models that the partnership is launching with, and they decide they want to put Ubuntu on it or they want to put Arch on it, will that hardware, the fingerprint sensor, will that still be supported?
So yes, I'm fairly sure all the 2020 models will have that fingerprint device on it. I haven't had my hands on all of them, but I was reviewing the specs last year, so should do. And yes, it's all upstream. It's there. So
that's so cool.
Distros get it at Arch. I'm not sure which version of Fprint library they've got in there. But yes, short answer is you should be able to. That's kind of the point, right? We all want Linux to be better.
Although I can't imagine why you would want to install another distro. It makes
choice, man. Choice is, it is the best and the best and most crippling thing about Linux at the same time sometimes.
Absolutely. And I'm joking. I love a lot of different Linux distros, and I'm happy that people have those options. I do think that once people get it with Fedora, many will be pleasantly surprised and happy to stick with what it ships with.
I have a related question, actually. This one comes from Akshay. Are there any plans to make custom Lenovo apps for Linux, like what Lenovo does on their Windows devices? CPU core control, GPU selection, and just that smart control center that Lenovo has. Any plans to kind of introduce some kind of Linux equivalent there?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I'm getting so excited.
There's always caveats. No,
I know, okay.
And I mean, honestly, and it's going to sound a bit marketing speak, but no, customer experience is really important to Lenovo. It drives a lot of what we do, and those make for better user experience on our platforms. So, and we have some projects going on internally to improve that. We have some Windows features that we're pointing at. I can't answer specific questions, but yes, we have plans. That there will be projects releasing, and we'll share those when they're available.
Good. Because I mean, I am content, and I'm sure that a lot of people that listen to this or watch this or read it on Forbes or wherever it's going to be will be ecstatic about just the plans. Right. But seriously, make some noise about it. Make some serious noise about it, because
it's been interesting, and I know just part of this Fedora announcement. It's been the feedback from the community has been genuinely, it's been fun.
Cool. Any specific feedback that you want to highlight?
From my point of view, so Lenovo has been doing Linux on its devices for custom orders, but it's been interesting how making sure that message is reaching people who want to use Linux, right? If different. There's choices. We talked about choices earlier, and I think a lot of Linux users didn't realize that Lenovo was doing this work, and it's really nice. It's really exciting to have it going out on the web. For me, that's amazing. But it's really nice to be able to share the message that, hey, Lenovo, we want to be a part of this. We want to work with the community, and we're doing this work, and so that's been really good, and it's been nice to be able to get involved. I think contributing to the community is important, and it's been nice to be able to do that. And then people say, "Oh, that's nice."
Yeah, that's encouraging.
Too many nices, but you know what? It is. The Linux community is pretty awesome. And
they are.
It's great. It's great to be part of it, and let people know that we're part of it.
Yeah, it's all about making that noise. Seriously, I remember when Dell started really making noise about Project Sputnik and really getting that message out there. A lot of people were surprised by it. They were like, "You've been doing this for the last 5 years, really?" I've expressed this before loudly, and one of my frustrations with Dell's Linux initiative is that, as wonderful as the machines are, it's really, really difficult to actually find, for example, the XPS 13 Developer Edition, and find that in a search and then click, you know what, I want Ubuntu on that. So if you can answer this, when people go to the web shops and they want to buy one of these new systems with Fedora, these are obviously going to be sold with Windows as well. If someone stumbles across this hardware on your web shop, will it just be as simple as going Windows 10 or Fedora 32?
I'm slightly hesitant to answer it, but yes, that is all the conversations I've had. That's the plan, and we're actually revamping our Linux support website because it needs work, and there's a support side going in and the sales side. It should be that easy. So again, yes, I have to add that caveat. Is like it's always the differences that it has to go through reviews and things can change. But the plan is it's an option. I know.
That's also encouraging.
Short answer is yes. We're not planning on making it difficult. It's not supposed to be hidden. It's supposed to be there.
All right. Let's see. You're on it. You've got a good. You've got a good track record so far. Okay, you have a good track record with this interview. But I'm gonna try and throw you some curveballs because that's my job.
No, I'm scared.
Tux key or Windows key on these systems?
Of course. So the hardware is identical for Windows and Linux.
Okay.
Right down to the silk screen of the key.
All right.
It's yes.
Can people pay? Can people pay extra to get a Tux key?
I hear people have invented these stickers.
Yeah, they have.
I like to see it as a GNOME user. I mean, forget what a logo it is. It's a very obvious key that when you push on it, shows you a nice tiled view of all your windows, just like the thing that happens to be shown on that key. So it seems fine to me.
All right, we're going to let that one slide because the hardware's cool. Will there be Will there be any price difference between the Fedora and Windows?
I can't comment on the price. We
Okay.
will be sharing the price when we get nearer to shipping. So
This is just the grab bag of questions, right? This is let's see what answers we can get, because I and the community are just dying to know some of this stuff. So
some things I'm waiting on too.
okay, let's talk a little bit about regional availability. Is that something you can touch on?
No, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
and that one's it. It is, and I've had lots of questions about this. Yeah, the plan is to ship worldwide. So that is the plan. We're going through some regulatory things right now, so there's potential for caveats. But yeah, plan is worldwide. So and
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah,
that's great to hear. Yeah,
I know. I've had quite a few messages from people in countries, and that's one of the big things, right?
And a lot of what about India specifically?
Planning to ship to India. Yeah.
Yeah?
Should
Yeah?
be. I know of.
Okay.
I know of no reasons why we wouldn't be.
That is a roadblock for other system.
Okay.
For Linux PC manufacturers that I've spoken to, India is an obstacle. I don't know all the details there, but that's one. And I know for a fact that I've got a bunch of listeners in India, and I know that they're very interested in let's get this hardware over
India
here.
has not hit my radar as a potential
awesome
issue. So Russia's tricky right now.
Aside from the Tux key answer, you guys are scoring so much points right now.
I can't believe you didn't like the Windows overview.
I mean, I know you
really
tried,
perfect.
Matthew. I know you tried. You tried your hardest. But
Push the button. Watch what it does. It's obvious.
perhaps a question for both of you, maybe with your own insights into it. What happens if I buy a ThinkPad with Fedora, and then 6 months later I decide I want to install Arch or Ubuntu or any distro that it is not shipped with, right? What level of support can Lenovo offer at that point? Is there any kind of warranty breaking happening there? If somebody says, well, I can't get DaVinci Resolve installed on my ThinkPad that I bought, but I'm using Arch and not Fedora.
The way it's worked currently is we support our Linux users to the best of our ability. We have our forums, and we're fairly distro agnostic. We'll look at an issue and try and help out. So we're still working out a lot of the details for support before we start shipping. There's still some things that we need to resolve there. So there'll be more to share later. So yeah, with a different distro, it makes it tricky. I don't know if I can give you a good answer there.
That's fair.
Look on the Arch wiki; they've got a great solution that's going to work just fine on Fedora.
The Linux Bible, in other words.
Yeah. And from Lenovo's point of view, I mean, we're obviously supporting the hardware. So if hardware is not functioning with another distro, we probably know the answer, right? And it's quite often it's like, well, you need to update your kernel to get this particular support, or you need this library. And honestly, that's the same across distros. It's so that's not a problem. And then when it gets into the Linux app specific stuff, then yeah, we recommend you talk to your distro because they're the specialists there. That's not something which
But it's nice that Lenovo won't come out and go, well, you voided your warranty. Sorry,
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know of any warranty issue. I mean, it's Linux.
So I have a question that this is completely over my head. I will admit that to you, but it's from Baltamatrix, and he asked for the enterprise customers, will there be any kind of MDM solution available for these Fedora machines? Similar MDM solutions are AirWatch, Microsoft Intune, and JAMF for Mac OS.
I'm passing that one to Matt.
None of that makes. I don't even know what that means. There's a lot of acronyms in there, but it's it seems like an important question.
All right. So keep in mind, it's been a long time since I was a sysadmin, but I believe those are that software for making sure that you have your basically fleet of systems out there is in compliance and running the software as it's supposed to. And we actually have something for that. It's a part of GNOME that some people at Red Hat have worked on called Fleet Commander. That is open source software that's sort of meant for managing your deployment of these systems. So that's not necessarily a Lenovo tied in thing, but that could at least be a component in what you're looking for. I actually do not know if there is a product tied to that or not, which makes me a bad employee, but there might also be a Red Hat product that is linked to that as well. I'm not aware of any other enterprise class things for that, but that's the open source project I'd look at.
Are any of these new ThinkPads launching with dedicated graphics from NVIDIA?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Both the P1 Gen 2 and the P53 have NVIDIA cards.
Okay. This was a community question, but it's also kind of one I'm personally invested in because...
yeah.
What? Go ahead.
You've been through this? I was going to say you've been through the installing Linux on a system with NVIDIA?
Yes. It was a while back, though. It's gotten much better.
It gets better still.
I don't know when, but it was about 2 or 3 months into my Linux journey, right? And Lenovo Croatia walked over to the apartment and like hand delivered it, which was amazing. They hand delivered a X1 Extreme for me to check out for like 4 days.
So P1 Gen 2 and the X1 Extreme are very close.
Okay. Well, because what happened is the first distro I tried to put on that was Fedora, and I got a black screen. I didn't know all the tricks of the trade at that point, I'm sure, but I was approaching it from a noob point of view.
We've all been there.
Yeah, and then I discovered Pop! OS because someone recommended that, because Pop! OS actually has a live active proprietary NVIDIA driver during the installation, and it was just boom. So I guess what I'm asking is, how are you reducing those pain points with Fedora for people who are using hybrid graphics?
Yeah.
During the installation, because I'm sure it's going to ship and everything's going to be working flawlessly, but if they want to do a reinstall or something.
The main focus point on this is to make sure that the Novo driver works out of the box, or fall back to the Intel driver, Mark, if that's, I'm not sure what the status is on those things. But that an open source driver works out of the box and that everything is smooth. You just don't necessarily get the enhanced performance that the proprietary drivers enables on those devices, but that you'll get an actual functioning system that you could actually even use for your daily work, as long as you don't need that extra performance. And so Lenovo graciously shipped to some of our hardware enablement people at Red Hat early pre-release versions of this of these systems. They've been poking at them to make sure that these things actually do have a good experience out of the box, and that everything will work nice and smoothly.
Nice.
It's pretty important to Fedora as a community that everything in the Fedora distribution is open source. It's who we are, and a lot of what we're doing this for, not necessarily as a moral everything must be open thing, but that we are trying to build an operating system that we own, and not just we, but Fedora, but like we, the people. This is our operating system that belongs to us.
Right. And
when vital parts of that operating system instead belong to one company, it kind of breaks what we're trying to do. So I really hope that NVIDIA can move to a model that works better with the open source world and community. I know they've got the reasons for doing what they do, and I know people want to get their hardware working and they don't want to care about all that, but we care about all that. The care we put into it really does end up benefiting everybody. We have a whole operating system, it works in an amazing way, entirely open source, a lot because we've pushed on those things over the years. And, people like Lenovo talking to their vendors, hopefully NVIDIA included, and saying, hey, this is the right way to do things. This makes things better for us, better for you, better for our users. That I understand the compromise that people have to make there. And I'm sympathetic, but I also feel like we're making the right choice here.
I can absolutely respect that. And I want to emphasize that it is not the fault of the Nouveau driver team that they don't have the kind of performance that the proprietary NVIDIA. That's because they're having to, unlock these magic boxes and and tap into hardware and code that they're not really given full access to. And so I think what they have done is amazing so far. And I ask that because I wonder if Fedora could attract more developers, more people in AI, machine learning.
Yeah,
you know where I'm going with that, right? Give me the proprietary driver, give me CUDA built in, just make it easy.
It's a fine line. So we've in the latest couple of releases, we've tried to make that an easier experience where we have an early option where you can opt into proprietary software sources. And so that actually goes to selected third-party repos that include the NVIDIA driver. So once you opt into that, you can add the NVIDIA driver, and Lenovo is going to have documentation for doing this.
Then honestly, great. I mean, as long as it's... Go ahead, Mark.
I think it's three or four clicks to get the proprietary driver installed now. It's quite easy. We have a document that will be.
Oh, that's not bad
for users who want it. So
that's not bad at all. I think if it's intuitive to get to it, and if there's documentation, and it's not, people, I'm assuming, do not have to go to the command line to do it. And so okay. Cool.
And just to wrap up from the Lenovo point of view, is obviously we're testing our platforms for the ship. So we had some NVIDIA related issues, that we worked through with the Red Hat engineers and got them solved. So
nice.
So it is nice. So the B1 Gen 2, you drop Fedora 32 on it, and it installs, and it comes up, and it's there and working. And I fully appreciate how nice that is.
Double Lift asked if we can get a Ryzen ThinkPad, please, with Fedora. And I know you're not going to answer that. Right? You can't answer that. I know that.
Yeah. So we do certify some of our AMD platforms for Linux, but no, it's not part of this Fedora program. And we'll share more when.
Okay, fair enough.
Keep asking Lenovo for it.
So that's why I got so many questions,
right? Yeah, exactly. Harass Mark, not necessarily to ask to harass. No, I got a lot of them too. It's not that they should harass you in particular, but especially if you are somebody who makes corporate purchases of laptops, have your company ask Lenovo for AMD laptops.
Yes, because if you're buying them in bulk, that's going to speak.
And, back to the, where did this come from? Lenovo would never have come to us if customers hadn't been wanting Fedora on their laptops. This is demand driven. It's not a charitable enterprise here, right? If you want it, dollars is how you vote.
Okay, so let's say I buy one of these new Fedora systems, but then I want to nuke and pave it with just a standard, Fedora 32 workstation downloaded onto USB stick, throw it in there. Are there going to be any differences between the Fedora 32 that ships from you and the Fedora 32 that I install on my own?
So the only difference is we have some documentation, just text documents, that is in /opt Lenovo. We got permission from Fedora to put those in there, and that's the only extra thing we're adding. Just a user guide, a guide to installing the NVIDIA proprietary, and so that's it. Otherwise, no, we are Fedora as it is.
So it is really respecting the
absolutely
kind of the operating mentality of Fedora itself, where it's no filler, no proprietary stuff.
No,
that's cool.
And,
okay,
and people can check it out, but
they will.
But
That's awesome.
We stand by that.
That's awesome.
I'm really excited about it because we didn't even have to sign a special legal trademark agreement about this because Lenovo is following our standard terms for loading Fedora preload that we've had since the beginning of time in Fedora, that let you say this is Fedora, running on Lenovo as long as you follow these terms of not changing the software. So they're just doing it the right way, and we didn't have to make any special exceptions. Although we did have to make that update for the opt Lenovo thing because these rules are so old that what they actually said was you can do that as long as it's on a separate CD. And we were all like, what's a CD? Oh yeah, I remember those. So we did update it so that content, documentation, but not code can be added under opt vendor to put that there because that seemed completely reasonable.
So let's talk big picture. Where do you guys each stand when it comes to adoption of the Linux desktop? What is not happening right now that you feel needs to happen to have desktop Linux gain more visibility and more traction and more just mainstream awareness?
Probably more a question for you, Matthew. I know from our point of view, it's how easily it is available, and I think
you guys are solving one of the big problems right now. Like you're doing that.
Kind of interesting. Like personally, my story is I my parents-in-law laptop died, so I lent them one of my development ones, and of course it had Linux on, and they coped, but it's not for everybody. So it's I think probably a better question for you, Matthew, is to you probably worry about it more.
Well, absolutely. I would have said, vendor support, getting it pre-installed is the #1 blocker. So removing that is huge. There are some kind of threats. I think we all talked about being all Firefox users here. Firefox being the real open source browser.
Me too. Yeah.
Chrome is the dominant browser for most people, and that, although there's an open source component to it, Chrome itself is not open source. And making a web browser it's an insanely complicated endeavor. So that basically everybody has given up except even Microsoft gave up on this one, right? There's Chrome-based things, and then there's Firefox. And if everything ends up being Chrome-based, that is another pretty big threat to this is an operating system that we own because everything runs in Chrome. On the other hand, that does mean that as long as Chrome keeps running on the Linux operating system, what we do is increasingly irrelevant to people because it's all sucked into that Chrome web browser world. I hope that Firefox remains viable and that other open source web browser technologies still stay part of our landscape because that's a thing that needs to happen. So use Firefox. That's my push there, really, no matter what Linux distro you're using. Another big threat is media patent, codec patents, and media format patents. When software patents are applied to things like the H.265 video format, it is hard to include those in open source because usually they want some sort of reasonable royalty. And there is no way that we can provide a reasonable royalty that then also leaves the thing open source. So we are where software patents are enforced, it's a threat to free software. And often large companies, when they're making their decisions about what things to do, those reasonable royalties are no big deal to them, but it then locks open source out of the picture. For a long time, Fedora didn't include MP3 playback support until now, when MP3 is basically obsolete. It's not that I'm anti-patent, the system just is failing what we're doing. On the positive side, and this is going to slightly a weird twist answer as well, but most people don't want a computer. Most people who have a computer today have a computer because they want to do the things a computer enables. They want to contact people, they want to consume media, maybe they want to create media. And a computer is a huge inconvenience, which they will put up with in order to get those things that having a computer connects them to. That's true.
I always thought the phone was the huge inconvenience, but that's just me. I guess I'm a little old school.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, right. So that's the "it's just you" thing is my next point. There are many of us for whom that is not true. We like to tinker. We like the power of a general purpose operating system. We are content creators. We programmers, media creators, designers, and having a full powered computer is important to us. And so I think that the mass market for desktops is going to go more and more towards, the Chrome OS, iOS. Your desktop is going to be more like your phone, which is a huge inconvenience to you and me, but is exactly what my dad would prefer, right?
Do you think we heading into a world where everybody wants really, really low-powered, low-priced computers, and all of the processing is done in the cloud?
I think that's where we're headed right now. That's a pendulum that always swings back and forth. But I think that what's going to happen is that the mass market consumer devices are going to be more locked down, and most people won't care. They will be more like a phone OS than a computer OS. Right. And your reaction is so your reaction is exactly where I'm going to as a positive here, because that will never be right for everybody. And there's always going to be a segment of people for whom we need to have a real computer. And this is where we get to the years of Linux on the desktop. Eventually, Linux will be the desktop operating system because the people who care about that will have Linux on it, and people who care, everybody else will get these different, more lockdown devices, and will have specialized devices that, are Linux devices. That will be the desktop computing operating system. In the near future, that's going to just be that we are a higher and higher share of what people buy on their computers. And Lenovo is going to see that and make more of them.
And I mean, Lenovo is all about giving the customer experience and giving the customer the choices, and we're seeing more demand for Linux, and there are users out there increasingly asking for Linux, which is good. I don't know if it'll be year of the desktop. But.
I have a completely random question, and I think it's more for you, Mark. Why is there no comparable laptop keyboard to the ThinkPad? Like, why? And I'm not like buttering you up. I don't even own a ThinkPad, but there's nothing even comes close to the travel, the comfort, the durability, the curved keycaps. Why?
I don't know the answer. I'm not a hardware engineer, but genuinely, I hear a lot of people say one of the big things about the ThinkPads is the fantastic keyboard, and it's really nice to use. I don't know the answer though. Sorry. But it's a nice keyboard.
I just sometimes I wonder, is there some kind of patent that prevents people from making them just as good, or I don't know. But
it's Lenovo Talent.
I own like 9 laptops, and I still want a ThinkPad because I want that keyboard. That's the distinguishing factor for me.
I don't know the reason for that. But,
for me, it's the track point in the middle of the keyboard.
Oh, so you like the track point?
Oh, it's so nice. You don't move your fingers off of the home row, and you can do mouse things as well. I also use an external mouse, but I much prefer the track point to the pad is only for scrolling. That's what it's good for. It's not good for pointer movement. It's horrible for that.
I could get used to that. I had my first laptop was actually a ThinkPad. I can't tell you what model it was. It was, it was this thick, and it was
I have one of those in my cupboard.
Way back in the day. But yeah, I remember really digging that.
P53, it's a brick like that.
Yeah. Question for both of you, and you don't have to answer it, but it'd be cool if you did. If Fedora didn't exist, what distro do you think that you would be using?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I guess it doesn't have to be a feature of the Linux distribution. Maybe it's more a feature of like the team behind it, or somebody that you see is doing all the right things in the Linux world, or what other Linux distributions do you respect because of what they're doing right now?
Even that's a tough question because they really are all different. I mean,
I know.
I know lots of people knock Ubuntu, but Ubuntu do a fantastic job of hardware enablement.
They do get a lot of they've got a giant target on their back most of the time. It seems,
but they do a great job. And then Red Hat and the Enterprise Linux, it's rock solid, and it's a really quality piece of software. And it's also, and then the other big community one, Debian, they do their own thing. They have their set, but
Debian is kind of important.
It's been around forever, and it's I'm definitely not going to pick a favorite. I will say, and so to give you a soundbite for this question, but I mean, Fedora genuinely is really fantastic. They have a really good community, a really inviting, welcoming community that's easy to work with, and that's great. And their whole approach with the latest software and having the latest versions packages from a laptop point of view, that's actually that makes my life easier too. So every distro is good, and Fedora has a very high place there too. Was that a good political answer?
Yeah, no, it really was. And I'll give you, just to be fair, I'll give you my answer right now.
Yeah.
Do you want mine first, or
you're gonna say I didn't know there were any other Linux distributions besides Fedora.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, go ahead.
I really like Debian's community approach to everything, and that's an amazing example of something that is entirely community owned without a single gigantic corporate sponsor, which is just amazing, especially after all these years, as Debian was one of the first distributions and is still around today. I don't think I would necessarily do things the way everything in Debian is done. So probably if that were the case, I might end up making my own Debian derived distribution. I do like tinkering with making things. We're good friends with the people over at OpenSUSE, and we share a lot of tooling, and I'd probably be an OpenSUSE user if it came down to it. I think things are, in some ways, it's since it's also RPM based, there's things that are familiar to me there, although they also do things in ways that I find strange and foreign, but it's pretty, and that's a good group of people as well.
I guess my answer would be Elementary OS. And I say that it's not my daily driver, but I still donate to the team, the Elementary OS team, because I love what they're doing with the App Center. And I love how they have embraced Flatpak and embraced this way of at least trying to generate some profit for the developers that are working on apps for Elementary OS, and now for App Center for Everyone, if you guys have heard about that. Bringing that pay what you want model of software to potentially every Linux distribution. And I respect them a lot for that. I like seeing developers with the option of getting paid, even if it's a pay what you want. I think that it opens a door for them that the majority of the Linux ecosystem doesn't give them. So tip my hat to Elementary for that.
Yeah. And I know they're a project that's worked a lot on polish and user experience, which is very cool as well.
Yeah. Where do we go from here?
I feel like you didn't like my forecast on the future of computing.
It kind of bummed me out, man. I mean...
Yeah, sorry. It came out in a negative way, but I really feel like...
Well, but it was probably realistic. It probably was realistic.
I mean, I think in some ways it might mean that the systems that are available to us are going to be relatively more expensive. We might get back into the days of when a average laptop that you or I would cost $2,000, which my first laptop I bought was a 3,500 or something like that. So maybe prices are going to go up, but I actually think it is generally going to be good because it will mean more Linux users overall and a larger share of Linux users among the people who are interested in making things and building things. I've heard people say Linux is all about choice. To me, Linux is not all about choice. Linux is all about sharing, and Linux is all about this being our thing that we build together. And the choices just come because people make different choices. And I think having an operating system that is the operating system of people who are creators, whether it's writers or musicians, or not just coders. Like having that be the operating system for people is going to just make a feedback loop where it gets better and better and better and better in the way that something that is a commercial product, even one with a company behind it that really cares about user experience and so on, like just that power of creators is going to feed into making it more and more and more awesome. That's my more positive.
That was a very hopeful, very moving. That was good. That was good stuff.
All right, thank you.
That was good stuff. That made me feel really good.
I wanted to take you down a little bit and then back up.
It's a roller coaster, this interview, man. Is there anything else that you guys want to get the word out about before we sign off?
Fedora 33 is in production now, so we're working on that. Look forward to that. October, November-ish.
Yeah, and from my point of view, we'll be sharing details on when these platforms are actually available, because I know people are waiting on. We're working hard on the process, and yeah, we're going to have some. We're going to have there's lots happening in Lenovo with around Linux, so lots of exciting stuff. So I'm looking forward to sharing that. And, we'll have more updates for you in the future.
I've been very encouraged by a lot of your answers, especially the store, the web shop component. I mean, if you guys nail that and make it easy for people to find a piece of hardware and just choose Linux for it, I am going to sing the praises of Lenovo 24/7. And I mean, really, that's an important thing to me, and that's an important thing to a lot of users, because this isn't a interview about Dell, and I love Dell, and I think they're doing amazing things for the Linux ecosystem, but the discoverability of those systems is still, it needs some work. And I think that with Lenovo also coming along as another great choice for Linux laptops, it's just going to be a big old awesome Linux party pretty soon. It's great. I'm so happy about it.
Big old awesome Linux party.
Big old awesome Linux party.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna really be losing a little money when those systems come out, I'm afraid.
I'm not up for a new laptop for another year or so. But I told my boss, look, I don't usually ask for much just because I'm the Fedora project leader, but maybe this one time, can we make an exception?
Which one of the three do you want?
I'm going to go for the X1 Carbon because I like the portability and it's slick.
It's sexy.
I wish there was a model with more RAM, Mark.
What's it top out at? 32?
I think that might top...
We don't have the specs out. We don't have the specs out for the X1 Carbon 8
okay.
do we? So
the P53 tops out at a ridiculous amount, right? It's like
128, I think.
Jesus. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you so much for. I mean, this is a dream interview, man. Having Lenovo and Fedora, and I'm sure that we could talk for about 3 more hours, but
we should do a follow-up sometime later then.
Yeah, let's if you want to do a follow-up maybe shortly after the system's launch. And then we can
actually share the answers to some of these questions instead of sitting there going, "Not allowed, can't share that yet."
I can have some maybe I can have some hands-on impressions there if Lenovo's PR department will just send one of each to me. Then
there's a Lenovo in Croatia, so yeah, I'm sure we can figure that out.
Thanks again, you guys, and I hope that we can circle back in a couple months maybe. And best of luck. I mean. I know that these systems are going to do well, and just remember to talk up those selling points, because
so thank you for hosting this. This is it's good to get the message out. It's something we have to do more of.
We're going to get the message out. Don't worry. All right, guys.
Thank you, Jason.
Take care. Thank you
Bye.
both. Okay.
See you. Matthew, I realized completely by accident, but I happen to have that glass on my desk.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I was sitting there going, man, this looks like I planted it, but no.
Yeah.
I happen to have this right here. I can't even.
There you go.
I can't believe it. It's just sitting here on my desk, and yeah.
That's a good
Not like I
mug.
planted that.
That's a great mug.
Yeah.